Oh, everybody! I just got back from the Mummy, and it was. I'm sorry, I can't do that, X. I just came back from the Mummy, and it was well. You know what? I'm not going to go right into it yet. I'm going to first talk about where I stand on the whole idea of a cinematic universe of the Universal monsters and the Mummy in general. Okay? Let me first say I'm a huge fan of the Universal monsters. I'm talking about the 1930s and 40s movies, The Mummy, Dracula, The Wolfman, and so on. I really love those movies. The Wolfman happens to be my favorite one. But I know some people have been saying they're doing this cinematic universe, and it's like their second or third try at getting it started. And it's just like, oh, look at all the money that Marvel's making. Let's do this. Everybody's doing it right now, and everybody wants to jump and rush into it. They don't want to slowly build up the characters with their own movies. They just want to jump right into like the Avengers in their first movie. They're not doing that build up, that slow build up that Marvel did. That was awesome. That's what made the Marvel Cinematic Universe great. They have great standalone movies, and they started with them. They didn't. I know that DC has Wonder Woman now, and it's awesome. And I didn't do my review on that, and I still might do that tonight. But yeah. Anyway, some people were saying they're doing this Universal Monsters Cinematic Universe. They call it the Dark Universe, and nobody asked for it, and obviously nobody wants it because it's their second or third try getting it started, and it's they've all been flopping immediately. And my personal opinion on that is that, what do you mean nobody asked for it? Nobody asks for most movies, and they still can be pretty awesome. I mean, you can't. That's like when people say, "Oh, that was an unnecessary sequel." Most sequels are unnecessary, and you can still come out with some pretty awesome sequels. Movies usually are unnecessary, but they are still really awesome. I love them. So I don't go along with this whole nobody wanted it. Nobody cares about the Universal monsters anymore. And besides that, for everybody who says something like that, nobody wants that. Nobody was waiting for that. You're wrong. There are a lot of fans of pretty much anything you can think of. There are a lot of fans of the Universal monsters. I'm a huge fan. I'm not alone. There are Facebook groups. There are all kinds of groups of fans of the Universal monsters. And Universal loves their monsters. You go to Universal Studios and you see their monsters, not as prominently sometimes as I would like, but they do have their own restaurant at Universal Studios Orlando, and they, sometimes you do see them there on Halloween and everything. I love those movies. For me, it's Hammer horror and it's Universal horror, and I prefer it to. I love 80s horror, but I prefer the classic monsters to slashers, to Freddy and Jason and Michael, and I can watch that stuff, but give me werewolves and vampires, give me the originals, the classics, or the Hammer remakes. I love that stuff. And they have redone these characters a lot, of course. There's an old joke about Dracula and how he's been done to death. And maybe Dracula's the one they've redone the most. But, back in the 90s, I remember when I was in high school going to see the Bram Stoker Dracula with, Winona Ryder and I forget who else. Oh, Gary Oldman, one of my favorite actors, playing Dracula. And Anthony Hopkins is Van Helsing. And then you had that Wolfman from, it was already the 2000s. It's not super old. It's like, I want to say it's like 6 or 7 years old with Benicio del Toro and again Anthony Hopkins. Some people say that that was supposed to be the first in this cinematic universe thing, and that it didn't, it didn't hit. So then they tried it with that Dracula Untold, and that didn't hit. And so this is supposed to be the first one. And we'll see. Hopefully this will hit. They've gone all out with this one. You go see this one, and at the beginning of the movie it says The Dark Universe. That's one of those movies. And well, I don't want to talk too much about the movie yet. I want to keep talking about a little bit more about the previous stuff. The Mummy. Of course, you have the old 30s Mummy movies. And then you have... There were some from Hammer. I own one of the Hammer Mummy movie, the first Mummy movie from Hammer. I still don't have those old Universal Mummy movies that just came out on Blu-ray. I need to get that Legacy collection. I'm pretty sure I've seen a couple of them. It's been a while. I know that the Brendan Fraser one that came out in '99 took a lot from the original Mummy movie. And then they had their sequels, and I love the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies. I never got into the Scorpion King. I actually didn't hate the concept of the character in Mummy Returns, but he was some really bad CGI. Stephen Sommers, who directed those movies, who I think probably wrote and directed them and all that, he was always one of my favorite directors because he made the Elijah Wood Huckleberry Finn, which is one of my favorite movies. But then and I don't know what's happened. I haven't seen much from this director recently, but he hasn't done like a ton of movies. But he did the Mummy trilogy, and there was the third Mummy, which actually was also a good movie, but it was kind of ruined by the fact that they couldn't get Rachel Weisz back for Evie, which, in my opinion, if you can't get a character like that back, that's such a major character. That's like if they made Return of the Jedi and they couldn't get Harrison Ford back and they just got another actor. You can't do that. You can't do it. But they did it. They got somebody else, and I don't even remember who they got, but you can't do it. and it was still a great movie, actually. I'm not saying it's as good as the previous two. I haven't watched any of them in a while, but it's about time I do. This new one, this new Tom Cruise movie, Tom Cruise / Russell Crowe / other people I don't know. Those are the only two people in this new movie that I know. But there's a guy who I think is from The New Girl with Zooey Deschanel, who I actually had a big crush on Zooey Deschanel when she was in Elf. But I won't watch The New Girl because I have a hard time with Zooey Deschanel now. She reminds me a lot of somebody. And boy, I will never watch. I actually saw a bit of it, that movie, 99 Days of Summer, is that what it's called? Yeah, that movie hits home, man. I can't watch that movie. But anyway, so yeah, I'm sure I would like The New Girl if I watched it, but I can't go there. But but apparently the sidekick guy, Tom Cruise's sidekick, is from that show. Yeah, Tom Cruise has a sidekick in this movie. But to get to the movie now, I will say this. The thing about this movie, because it's not a bad movie, not really. What some people have said, and this is what I was touching on before, is that it's more than anything just trying to set up this cinematic universe, and it's doing that so much that it's not really a movie on its own. It's just like, I believe Cinema Snob in his review said that it was like a, not to quote other people's reviews much, but I have to quote this. It was a good quote, that it was that there was no teaser, like little clip at the end of the credits, because the whole movie was one of those things. And I disagree with some things he said in his review, but I have to agree with that. That hit the nail on the head. But I still thought it was an okay movie. I didn't feel like it was as unfocused and all over the place as you know as he did. My personal opinion, the thing about this movie is that it's not much of a mummy movie as much as it is a Tom Cruise movie. It's a Tom Cruise action movie. It is. I don't really watch the Mission Impossible movies, but going by what I get from the trailers, I've seen like the first one like back when it came out. I don't remember. But going by what I get from a Mission Impossible trailer, I feel like this was like that if you inserted zombies and mummies and other monsters in it. That's what this was. And the toughest thing about that is that it doesn't compare well to the Brendan Fraser movies, even though the Brendan Fraser movies have really bad effects that probably don't hold up. They're not... I might be thinking more of Stephen Sommers' later movie, which was Van Helsing, which actually had far worse effects. And that's still a guilty pleasure for me. I actually should say I had a hard time watching the movie today because I bought Van Helsing this week on Blu-ray, and the reason I bought it is because it cost like $7.99 and it came with $8 off of the Mummy ticket. So, you know, basically I was getting Van Helsing for free, which I've been meaning to buy for quite a while because I used to own it and I haven't had it in a long time. So I, you know, upgraded it to Blu-ray this week. And I got my little Fandango ticket, but I couldn't get a ticket for the Draft House. I had to get a ticket for a Regal Cinema Theater, and I will never do that again, I think, because the whole time I couldn't really focus 100% on the movie because some woman came in with her 5 kids, and those kids were climbing the walls. They never sat down once in the movie. They had lights on their shoes, like blinking bright lights on their shoes. They were talking like they were outside playing, you know. It was like they were at McDonald's Playland, but it was at the movie, and they were completely oblivious to the movie. And this was amazing. There were boobs in the movie. There were monsters. This is the sad thing, and this is sad for the kids because there's a certain pleasure out of this that you're not getting. But they're so desensitized to the horror stuff. Because when I was that little, I mean, you know, in my generation and generations before me, at very small ages, we enjoyed watching horror films because we got the full scare, you know, and we'd be hiding behind our parents watching horror movies. These kids, I mean, they're probably at home playing Legos while Walking Dead is on TV. We didn't have that stuff. You know, when we watched scary movies, we loved them. We watched them all the time, but it was a big deal. So, you know, everybody, the whole family would be on the couch and the lights would be off and you'd be there with popcorn watching a scary movie and you'd be hiding behind your parents or in between them. These kids now, it's, wow, nothing, you know? There was some horrific stuff in this movie. It wasn't a horror movie. It was a horror action movie. It was an action movie with horror elements. And that's really not enough. These should be horror movies. They should. Universal has been determined to make them action movies every time. The one that got the closest to being more of a horror movie was the Benicio del Toro Wolfman. But, and you know, if you go back, I don't know, I guess that Dracula, I don't know if that was a Universal movie, but I'm thinking of the 90s one, but that might not have been Universal. But yeah, you know, kids especially are so desensitized, and I mean, these kids were climbing the walls and the mom was there like totally oblivious. But I will say this, there weren't a lot of people in the theater, and this was like 9 o'clock, a 9 p.m. showing on opening night, and I don't know, I hope this does well because I want to see more of these movies just because out of curiosity mostly, because they're not doing them right. I mean, they should be making horror movies. They really should. They should be making atmospheric horror movies. They can still cross over. And I've been saying this for a long time because I liked the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, and yeah, it wasn't really scary because of the CGI and all that, but it was a lot of fun, and yeah, it was a lot of action. There was some creepy stuff in it a little bit, but it wasn't really very scary. But you know, if you're going to be doing Wolfman and Dracula and all this other stuff, they're monsters. These are monster movies. Try to make them at least a little scary, and they're really not supposed to be the Avengers. They're not. And I'm not saying you can't make them good guys, which I don't know if that's what they're doing. I don't really know if that's what they're going to try to do. That would be like having a team of nothing but the Hulk. Just a bunch of Hulks. They're just all monsters, you know? I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing that they're trying. I mean, if the point is just to have them share movies, you know, but it doesn't seem like that. It seems like they're trying to get a team together, an Avengers team. If their point was just to have them share movies, well, for one thing, we've seen that before. I mean, Van Helsing, you know, people have said Monster Squad and stuff like that. That was a little different, but it's not. I mean, the original Universal monsters, they did this. I mean, they're the inventors of the shared universe, you know, the original Universal monsters. So, you know, they're just, you know, trying to recreate something they did back in the 40s that culminated. Well, actually, no, it didn't culminate with Abbott and Costello. I think they did more of that. I think they did more after that. I don't remember the full timeline of that, but anyway, yeah. But the movie is Tom Cruise, and he and his friend they kind of scavenge like archaeological sites, and they're in the Middle East, and they're with the military. I'm not sure if they are soldiers themselves, but they're with the military in the Middle East, and they're kind of like looking for treasures on the side. They kind of like always wander off and go looking for like antiquities to sell on the black market. And you know, they find this lost city that is an Egyptian city that's totally in the wrong location and everything. And there's this female archaeologist type character. I don't know her name or the actress's name. A very attractive blonde lady that is the love interest. And you know, they have their tension in the beginning because he stole the map to the secret city from her. And I say he, I mean Tom Cruise. So anyway, they take the mummy, they're into an airplane, and they end up crashing over England. Tom Cruise and everybody else, except for the girl. He gets the girl off the plane with a parachute, and he and the rest of the people on the plane die. And but since he's cursed, he comes back to life. The mummy, who is a female in this film, and is very reminiscent of the Enchantress from Suicide Squad, she brings him back to life because she wants Tom Cruise to be the vessel for an ancient Egyptian god of death that she wants to bring to life in Tom Cruise's body. So much of the film is about Tom Cruise trying to get this curse broken, and he thinks Russell Crowe's going to help him. Russell Crowe is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which we do see, which is a little less than spectacular. It's kind of just Russell Crowe with like a Cockney accent and a little bit of CGI to give him a scarier look, but not a lot. He almost looks the same. And but I thought he was cool in the movie, and he's kind of the Sam Jackson, like you know, Shield kind of what's his name? Anyway, I forget the name. The director of Shield, the original. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now. So it's a very similar kind of deal. And but he's still kind of a bad guy, and he doesn't really want to help Tom Cruise. He wants to like trap that Egyptian god in Tom Cruise and then just kill him. But anyway, so he ends up if I didn't say spoiler alert, well, if you've watched my videos, you know I do get into spoilers a little bit. Anyway, I often don't go all the way into the spoilers, and I might not do that right now. But you know, it's a lot of action scenes, a lot of trying to get away from Russell Crowe sometimes, and sometimes the mummy and her many zombies, and sometimes they're mummies and sometimes they're zombies, and they're trying to find this dagger, which is necessary to turn Tom Cruise into this god. And it's a lot of action in search of this dagger and trying to get to it before the mummy. And at times the mummy's captured, at times she's not. It's a lot of back and forth action stuff. And some people have said it's overly complicated. It's really not. It's just they are totally doing their own thing, and their own thing here is to make a Tom Cruise action movie around the idea of the mummy, but it's totally their own idea of the mummy that they've created for this movie. It's not any of the previous ideas of the mummy, not really. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't feel a lot like a mummy movie, but it kind of does, because of course there is a mummy in it, sort of. It's just very different from the traditional ones we're used to. The thing is, this is supposed to be the Universal Monsters universe, and we're not really seeing the Universal Monsters. We're seeing a new group, and I think that's something they're missing when they make this universe. The thing about seeing the Marvel characters and the DC characters is we've always known them, and we've always wanted to see them together on screen. The Universal Monsters, we have seen them together on screen for one thing, but I mean, it has its fans. There are those of us who do want to see more. We do want to see them back. We do want to see them together on screen, but they're kind of unrecognizable when you start changing things around. I mean, not saying that the Wolfman needs to be a guy, you know, wearing clothing and walking around on two legs, but you know, at least when he's a human, he should remind you of Lon Chaney Jr., you know? With Dracula, make him the Universal Dracula. Make him that very Bela Lugosi type Dracula, you know? Frankenstein, let's make him look like the old Universal. If they own these characters, I think they can still use those looks, you know? At least for Frankenstein, should look like the classic Universal Frankenstein. The Mummy, there's a lot of leeway. It's not the main three. It's probably the fourth main one. For me, it was always, I mean, everybody knows it's the Wolfman, Dracula, and Frankenstein, right? But then you have the Mummy, and you have Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Invisible Man, and Phantom of the Opera. And Dr. Jekyll, I guess. You know, Dr. Jekyll is almost like the next level to me. I like Dr. Jekyll, but I don't know. I'm cool with him being... Sometimes they include Quasimodo, which is really messed up. But that happens. Even DuckTales did that, so... and I think a lot of times what they're thinking of is Igor, and they just go with Quasimodo. Yeah, oftentimes when they have groups of monsters, they consider the Hunchback a monster. And they'll call it, you know, they'll say, here's Quasimodo the Hunchback. And that's not right, man. That's like a disability or something. But anyway, one of my favorite Halloween specials is the Halloween That Almost Wasn't, which was known on home video as The Night Dracula Saved the World. And it's from the late 70s or early 80s. And it's, again, another time we saw all the classic monsters together. And these ones were blatantly copying Universal. But I guess since it was a parody, unless Universal made this, but I doubt they did. But I mean, this isn't something we've never seen before, and that's fine. That's okay. But if you're gonna totally remake the characters, it's not going to be a shared universe we've been dying to see all our lives, or see come back, you know? So, I don't know. I'm still curious to see where they go with this, but I guess it feels like they're making it up as they go along. I guess that's kind of what they were doing with the originals, but they had such a classic feel, and they had some real horror to them, even though it was like 1940s horror. It was still like, you could tell that it was something that at one time was scary, and they're still great films. They're great movies to watch. This one, I'm not going to say it's not a fun movie to watch, but it's not as fun as the Brendan Fraser ones. If you're in it for... It doesn't have the personality of the Brendan Fraser movies. And it doesn't have the focus. I'm not saying it doesn't have focus. I think it has focus, but its focus is creating a shared universe. But it has a focus in the movie, which was, let's, see what happens to Tom Cruise. Is he going to end up, is he going to be able to stop this curse? Or is he going to end up being taken over by this demon, I think Egyptian god. So I guess that was kind of the plot. And is this girl going to survive? The blonde girl who was the love interest. And they do this thing with his sidekick, where his sidekick, spoiler alert, his sidekick gets killed very early in the movie, and then he comes back pretty much exactly like in American Werewolf in London. Luckily, it's not as annoying as it was in American Werewolf in Paris, but it's not anywhere near as enjoyable as Jack in American Werewolf in London. So, and it's very pointless too. It seems like it to me. He's supposed to be comic relief, but he's not really. He barely comes out. It's not really very funny when he does. So it was kind of pointless because this wasn't the werewolf story, and they tied it to the curse, but you should have saved it for the werewolf story if you were gonna do it, and then do it really well. I don't know who if that. I think that was the Universal movie, American Werewolf in London. Was it? I know they promoted Universal Studios at the end. Anyway, yeah, American Werewolf in London happens to be my favorite horror film. They did that at Halloween Horror Nights, and it was just amazing. It was like, it's my all-time favorite Halloween Horror Nights house that I've been to. I've only been there twice, the last 2 years, I think. But, yeah, that was my favorite house. But anyway, yeah, they should be going full-on horror with this. They could use it on Halloween Horror Nights. But they're just not. They're going more action. It's more like, it's monsters, but it's action monsters. And there were some horror elements. I mean, there were scenes that I think could have been really creepy if there weren't a family of kids over in the corner with lighted up shoes that were ruining the whole experience for me, man. I had a hard time focusing on this. I think I would have enjoyed it 10 times more. But I know I would not have enjoyed it the way I enjoyed the Brendan Fraser ones. Those were just better movies, and they were better mummy movies, because they were mummy movies. This one is more, like I said, it's more of a Tom Cruise movie with mummies in it. That's the best assessment I can give of this. It's a Tom Cruise movie in which he is sort of introduced to an organization that hunts monsters. And the main bad villain in this particular installment is a mummy. But more focus on Tom Cruise. And it's fine. It's not unwatchable. It's not a terrible movie. It's just it is exactly that. It is the whole point is to start the cinematic universe that they're doing, and it's obvious, The point was not, let's make a great mummy movie. And, they'll meet up with the other great monster movies we're going to make. That wasn't the way they did it. That's the problem, Marvel made a great Iron Man movie. And then they made a decent Hulk movie, and they made, you know, they made all these different characters movie. Great Captain America, all the Captain America movies have been great, and you know, and they would intersect, they would cross over, and they still do, and they just did such a great job slowly building up to that Avengers movie. And look at Justice League. They made 3 movies. It's not a terrible amount, but we came right into it with already Robin's dead, and Batman is not as smart as he should be, and and Superman is just dreary from the beginning, and he's supposed to be the lighthearted one compared to Batman, you know? And Wonder Woman's great, but that's another review. But anyway, I mean, Marvel's doing it right. Nobody else is. I mean, it's obvious that you're all copying Marvel, so you might as well copy their plan of like slow build up. But they just want to get straight to the Avengers. They all just want to get straight to being the Avengers. But I mean, if you're curious about it, and if you like Universal Monsters, go see it, because they might get better. Look, Wonder Woman has shown that they can get better when they do this sort of thing. So hopefully it'll get better. This has been said before in other reviews, but it's very reminiscent of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. In my case, I actually really enjoyed that movie. And that's a movie that it's similar to like being a shared universe. I mean, that's basically what it is, but they didn't do any other movies. I mean, if it was a hit, they would have done more, but I mean, they didn't do any movies before that. But everybody already knew those characters from other movies. I mean, there's been a million Huckleberry Finn movies or Tom Sawyer movies. I mean, there's been plenty of Sherlock Holmes movies and Dracula movies and everything. So it was kind of okay to jump right into League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I know there's been a lot of Dracula movies and everything, but we might not get a Dracula movie for this one. But anyway, I say go check it out if you're curious, if you're interested. It's not a bad movie. For me, it was exactly what I expected from the trailer. The trailer was exactly, you know, that was it. That's what it was. It was Tom Cruise action movie with mummies, setting up a universe. That's what it was. All the acting was fine. Mummy had a phenomenal bod. You know, it's just what you see in the trailer. That's what it is. It's not unenjoyable. Go check it out, but don't expect too much. It's not Marvel quality. It could have been so much better. It could have been so much better. Don't take a bunch of little kids to a 9 o'clock showing with shoes that light up and then just let them run wild in the theater. That's not cool. I will not make the mistake again of not going to the Draft House. The Draft House is very strict about noise, and there's no, you know, there's rarely kids there. It's pretty awesome. Okay, guys, that's it for this. I just wanted to, you know, I saw it, so I talked about it. I was excited, eager to see it, just because I love Universal Monsters. But I knew, I had a feeling what it was going to be, and it was exactly that. Not unwatchable, but I wish it was better, but it's not horrible. Okay, bye.